Mobility problems can be some of the most challenging aspects of living with MS. They can interfere with our family time, our work, our fun, and it can be incredibly draining on us cognitively and physically. But what if I told you there's bionic clothing that may help? I'm very excited to have my guest, Jeremiah Robison, the founder of Cionic, with me today. Cionic produces clothing that can analyze and augment human movement, enabling the body to move with more freedom and control. And who doesn't want more freedom and control? Welcome, Jeremiah.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited that you're here today. I just think the sleeve is amazing. I love the technology behind it. I love how it helps with neural challenges that we have. So, let's jump right in. Can you start with what's a basic description of the Cionic Neural sleeve?
Absolutely, yes. The Cionic Neural sleeve is a leg-worn garment that is made of two layers of lycra. So it wears like a legging, but it is imbued with all kinds of sensors that measure one, the signal that is traveling from the brain to the muscles using a technology called surface EMG. And then we also look at the limb kinematics using IMUs. So that way we can see the cause and effect of what is happening within the neuromuscular system. And then we use that information and inject small amounts of current into the nerve innervation points of the muscle using what's called functional electrical stimulation to elicit a muscle contraction. And we're able to sequence the muscles during complex movements like gait, such that we can help to a more natural and less cognitive load. You talked about that earlier, gait pattern. And so we call it bionic clothing, sensing, stimulation in a form factor that is super easy to wear.
So tell me a little bit about the inspiration for the sleeve. How did you come up with this idea?
Yeah, this is a very personal mission for me. My daughter, Sophia, she's 14 now. She has a diagnosis of cerebral palsy, a one-time injury at birth. She was born super premature, 3 months early, 2 pounds, 4 ounces. She was just a tiny little thing. And as is common with that, she wasn't fully developed. And so she ended up with a diagnosis of cerebral palsy, which affects her motor system. She has a version called spastic diplegia, which in many ways is similar to someone who is post-stroke, where she has both challenges with sequencing motor movements and then spasticity and high tone. And as a technologist I've worked at the intersection of data and the human body for most of my career, I sort of just grew increasingly frustrated with the lack of technological solutions to help support her mobility. So in 2018, I quit my job and I went into the garage and I started to try to build out a system that could both understand what was happening within her movement, but then also really be able to augment it. There's so many products that analyze, but nothing that really helps not close the loop. And so she's the inspiration. And as I was building out these early prototypes before I raised money, I wanted to say, is there something I can actually do? Or am I just a desperate father wanting something to exist that doesn't exist? And then second, is there a business there, right? Because it's one thing to build one product for one person, but to really have, go out and raise money and build a company, there has to be a large number of people. It turns out there is, and it's actually kind of a shocking number when you think about all of the individuals who are living with impaired mobility, and that number growing. It's estimated that 20% of the population will be living with mobility impairments by the year 2050.
That's so awesome. What a great inspiration. Your own daughter inspired you to start the company. And congratulations, starting in 2018, and you launched sales this year. That's a pretty small startup time. That's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, they say that it takes about 6 years and $30 million to launch a class 2 medical device.
Yeah.
We did that at a fraction of the cost. And A little bit less on the time side.
So let's dive a little bit deeper into how it works. It
Yep.
works with, I believe, 4 different muscle groups. And how can that help us walk better?
That's right. So many people are probably familiar with functional electrical stimulation. Oftentimes it's used in a clinical setting, and there are some home use products, typically one muscle, right? We're typically looking at the dorsiflexors and a symptomatic condition across the upper motor neuron spectrum, which is called foot drop. And so our clothing does address foot drop. That's what our first trials were in. But back to the inspiration of my daughter, and she had tried one of these single muscle dorsiflexor stimulators, and we're like, why doesn't it work for her? Well, the reality was she didn't have a challenge lifting her toes. That was not the challenge. What she has a challenge with is spasticity in the gastroc, pushing the toe back down. And so no amount of stimulation for her dorsiflexors would have fixed her problem. But when we were able to sequence all 4 major muscle groups, the dorsiflexors for dorsiflexion, for the swing phase to clear the toe, the plantar flexors for better push off, and also to disrupt that pattern of extensor tone that she has, the quadriceps for getting full knee extension. She walked with symptomatic crouch gait, which is not so typical in MS, but very typical in cerebral palsy. And then the hamstrings, stiff knee, being able to get that knee to bend and to fire. What we saw was this really profound step change from a single muscle to these 4 muscle that really justified this idea of let's sequence the whole gait. Typically, our users are more impacted on one side than the other, so they'll use just a single sleeve. We do have some users that use dual sleeve. But what's really interesting, and you go back to this question of fatigue, what we've heard from almost everybody, and this is especially true within our MS community, is that when we are sequencing all 4 muscles, there is such a large reduction in how much they're thinking about stepping. And that has been like the big breakthrough in this community.
Yeah, I have a lot of friends that have MS, and I have one friend in particular who has a young daughter, and she wants to keep up with her, but it's really hard because she gets physically and cognitively fatigued just trying to keep up with her daughter and walk with her and play with her. So this would be such a help to people like that. When people use the sleeve, how long does it take for them to notice improvements?
It can vary widely. Some people put it on and right away they are experiencing not only observable changes to what they're able to move, but also experiencing that feeling of cognitive load reduction and even increase in gait speed. In fact, our initial clinical trials were all done with back-to-back immediate orthotic effects. So one session in clinical office, we did it in partnership with Cleveland State University, and they would walk basically 1 lap without stimulation, and then 1 lap with stimulation, then 1 lap without, and then 1 lap with. And so 6 times through to just avoid any sort of bias in that data. And we saw 94% of people had kinematic improvements to their gait. So really immediate, fantastic results. And one thing in particular that I will highlight from those studies is that oftentimes not only, and we were looking at foot drop in this case, not only do people have difficulty lifting the toes to clear them as the foot swings through in gait, but also they roll the foot. And so it's called inversion. Mm-hmm. And so one of the innovations within our clothing is we actually can steer the stimulation. And so it's not just a single point of stimulation. We use an array of electrodes. And so we can balance dorsiflexion and eversion. So we can help on both. And so we saw improvements to both dorsiflexion, foot clearance, and reduction in inversion. So that all happened in a single session. And then we sent people home for a 12-week home use trial. And that's where we really saw people start to get more used to the sensation of stimulation. It is a different feeling, right? Somebody else is eliciting and they're putting electricity in your body. It's not always, might take a little bit of use to. And also, it's like we're not mechanically actuating the body. We're using muscles that exist. And sometimes those are atrophied, and it'll take a while to build up some of that musculature. And so, what we were seeing over the course of those 12 weeks was a 50% average increase to gait speed, which is often used as a marker for community ambulation. And then these really amazing secondary effects: reduction in anxiety, so that fear of falling; reduction in depression, being able to go and keep up with the kids, go on vacation, these types of things that people want to do, but can be limiting. And then even pain, even a reduction in pain, which is just a really surprise to us. So what we typically say is it can be right away, but 1 month. Let's take 1 month and let's make sure that you're able to use the device confidently, that you're able to set it up yourself, and you're able to walk comfortably with it. And we use that first month to basically trial the product and make sure it's right for people. Some people, they're good after their first session. Some people, it takes that full month.
Yeah. So 94% saw improvement almost immediately. And you said 50% after 1 month saw greater improvement?
The 50% was an increase to gait speed.
Oh, increase.
That's on average across all of the patients who are in our 12-week home trial.
Those are astounding numbers. So it really helps with quality of life. I was watching one of the videos on your website, and one of your users, Jan, was talking about how it almost immediately improved her quality of life. She was able to walk in areas in her shoreline community that she had not been able to be in for years and years. And one of the most touching moments is she was a person who used a walker. And using a walker is a very solitary event. You have to have both hands on the walker. And now she can walk arm in arm with her husband. That's a huge change to quality of life.
Yeah, Jan is very special to us. She was one of our early trial users. She has a diagnosis of cerebral palsy, as she shared in that video. So I see a lot of my daughter in her, and her whole family. So meeting her husband, and we've been out to their home, and we were there for that video shoot. And what was really interesting is, we saw the improvement that she had, and that she talked about immediate in our initial session. But then when we went to see her, it had improved that much more. She had gained strength, and she had gained mobility, and she was walking through the dunes there. It was very exciting, and she continues to make progress. I remember her telling us when she was able to go upstairs, right, like without stopping at every stair.
Yeah.
And that it is a journey, right? It's a progression, and with MS, there's this other progression, the progression of the disease. And so it's a constant journey. And one of the things that we pride ourselves in is we do have basically what we call a telehealth layer inside the app, so that our mobility specialists can check in and help tune things up if you need it, and just make sure you're always getting the most out of the device and the experience as a whole.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I think that the quality of life issue is going to be so appealing to so many, because when we start to have mobility problems, like I said at the beginning of the interview, it interferes with our family time, our work, our fun time, and we become more and more isolated. And having the ability to go out and participate in life is, you can't measure what that means to people. That's fantastic. So one of the other things that I noticed about the sleeve when I was doing my research for the video is it's kind of attractive. It looks a little bit like what professional sports people use. They use compression sleeves and socks when they need that little extra help. I'm like, that's kind of a cool looking thing. Tell me a little bit about the design and the fabric and how it came to be.
This, again, hearing from my daughter, the othering that happens with assistive devices. She would use a walker. She's used AFOs. She's used canes, and people are always looking, and it's not the most attractive equipment, but you need it, right? Like, this thing is helping. So, but what oftentimes happens with the stigma around a disability or assistive equipment is that people won't want to use it. If you don't use it, you're not moving, things start to deteriorate. And so, the inspiration was, how can we make something that is aspirational, that feels like sportswear? You talk about the compression sleeves. It was the thing that convinced me that one sleeve was going to be fine, is that all the NBA players are off with just, wearing their one sleeve. And so we said, let's make something that people will want to wear. And we're first generation. I think we're going to continue to drive on this point. When it came time to say, let's now take this technology, which we know can help people, and let's make it highly functional. Let's make it aspirationally attractive, as you said, something that, one, if it's discreet enough, you can wear it under clothes if you want. But it is also kind of cool. And if you want to show it off, like, let's make it so that you can show it off. And so what was really awesome about that experience is they went out and they interviewed people across the abilities spectrum and said, what are the things that you need out of this product, and what are the things that you're looking for? So starting with that really consumer focus, right? We didn't start with the payers, we didn't start with the providers, we started with the users themselves. And so put a really high premium, one, on independence of donning, right? Within the stroke community, you often have contractures of the upper extremity as well. So could they be able to put it on with one hand if that's all that they had access to? And then, we worked to get it to that point. And, I'm excited to keep going. We did 2 colors, right? Because even if it is a medical device, you don't want it to look like a prison bracelet, right? You want it to be something that reflects. And so we hope that as we get more users, that we can offer even more colors. We can offer different form factors, 1 leg, 2 leg, and continue to drive on it, because at some point in the future, this will impact everyone. Everyone will have clothing that has sensors, that has intelligence, that has the ability to protect, diagnose, and augment. And we're at the forefront, and we're working with people who need it most, who have the most to gain out of it. But all of this is, trying to move to a future of bionic clothing for everyone.
And I really do think, you're right. We are moving towards a time where we are going to have sensors in our clothing. And like you said, we're getting older. We're the biggest generation getting older right now. So we're all going to need a little assist at some point. When it comes to people with multiple sclerosis, can anyone use the device? Is it better for relapsing, remitting, or primary progressive, or does it matter?
Yeah, so we look primarily at the EDSS, the disability score, and that goes across a number of different conditions. And so we say between 2 and 7, right? 2, where you're just starting to experience challenges with the mobility, through to 7, which is where you're in a wheelchair for a lot of your longer duration mobility. And so we've had users across that full spectrum. MS has been a little bit broader for us than some of the other conditions, specifically like different types of spinal cord injuries. Sometimes you lose that innervation, right? That where the nerves can no longer elicit a muscle contraction. That once that happens, we don't have anything left to activate. But in MS, because typically the peripheral nerve structures are intact, and it's really the lesions at the in the spine, we are able to help a broader spectrum within the MS community.
Can users, you mentioned that when you went to see Jan, you noticed improvement after she'd been using it for a while. Can users see improvements that may lead them to no longer needing the sleeve, or maybe reduced use of the sleeve?
Yeah, I always caution this, with, it would be irresponsible to say across the board that this happens. We have seen anecdotes where people have gained strength, gained mobility, and remapped some neural pathways. We have graduated, we call it graduated, a couple of people from using the sleeve. These have both been in the stroke community. So just, the difference between the progressive disease and not. But, we have seen it, and that's a goal, right? And that's why this technology is so different than, say, an exoskeleton or hard bracing, something where it is not really reinforcing the natural pathways of movement. Is bracing is going to hold your foot in place. It's like you're probably not going to drag it because it's always locked in place. But this has the opportunity to help rebuild pathways. And what's interesting about what we have built from the platform side is there is gait, right? And that's the hero feature of this. You put it on and you go out and you walk in. But we also have a number of different exercises to help reinforce that neuroplasticity. And so there are two, what we call them different types of exercises. One which are single muscle movements, and I think toe raises and calf raises, and those can be done in 3 different modes. One which is biofeedback. You see, because we can measure the activity of the muscles firing, you can see a little meter. If you've ever done rehab at a PT, they have those little boxes with green lights. It's exactly like that. So we can measure how much muscle activity is going. And even if you're not seeing a lot of movement, we've definitely had users who you don't visibly see the movement, but you can see that little bar go up. It's like, all right, something's happening, right? And then we can use stimulation on a timer to basically activate that muscle, start to build the strength and the blood flow. Or we can use it in a hybrid mode where we're actually using that signal that is being sent from the brain to then activate stimulation. And that's where it's really exciting to think about that. It's like a reinforcement of a pathway that already exists and just making it stronger and reinforcing that. So we do that in single muscle exercises. And then just this last month, and we're really proud that we continue to innovate on the software side to bring new features to our community. We have now these, what we call pre-gait movements. And so it's coordinating, for example, swing with dorsiflexion, right? So the extending the knee and then lifting the foot. This is really common that people, especially within the stroke community, have extensor tone. So when they extend the knee, they also point the toe. This is aimed at breaking that tone pattern. And then we have one called rockers, which is the transition from plantar flexion, push off to then swing. So that's one of the things, people get locked in that plantar flexion and have a hard time then lifting their toe back up. So we really try to break down the problem, think about it from how do you get people further along in their capability with the goal of independent movement.
That's so amazing. So they can use the app with the sensor in the sleeve to do single muscle exercises.
Yep, single muscle and then multi-muscle, and then obviously gait. And we also have a stationary cycling, so it coordinates cycling as well.
Oh, that is really fantastic. So it's really exciting that you have received FDA approval. So tell our viewers, how can they get the sleeve and where is it currently available?
We're basically able to ship to almost every state. So one of the interesting parts about being a home use medical device company is that every state has its own regulations as to what you need to go through. So we still have 5 or 6 states remaining: Florida, Wisconsin, Nevada, North Dakota, and Montana, that we are not yet, we're still working on getting the approval in. Everywhere else we can ship to. And as I said at the beginning of how we roll this out is we have a telehealth, like basically a video conference like this, but with our ability to adjust the settings and monitor what is happening within the sleeve. And so if they go on to our website, cionic.com, then they can place an order, which then you have to get a prescription. It's prescription only products. So we'll give you the information to go to your neurologist or your GP. And then they get the prescription. Once we review that, we'll ship it to their homes and then schedule an appointment to do this online appointment. And what we did, and we wanted to having tried these types of technologies in the past, typically there's some brick and mortar setup that has to happen, and it's a one-time. It's like our trial, and then you have to commit one way or the other, and it's a large cash outlay. And in the case with my daughter, it didn't work, right? We didn't try anything that we could afford, right? Like, we'll do anything. We're desperate. So we said, look, it's $200 a month and cancel anytime, right? And so if it is working for you, great, continue to use it. If it's not, cancel, return the device. And what we hope is that makes it more accessible for people, that they can try it for a whole month. Like I said, the immediate gains versus what you see after a month tend to be quite profoundly different. And so we just wanted to structure the way in which we price it to something that meets the user's needs.
That's wonderful. When I was looking at the pricing structure, knowing that insurance is not going to cover devices like this, like other devices that we need as well, having the ability to say, okay, I don't have to outlay the entire cost at once. And if it doesn't work for me, then I can return it and stop the payments. So I think that's a wonderful way to help the users get it on and try it. So
yeah, and don't give up on reimbursement either. We have seen cases where our customers, with a great letter of medical necessity from their provider, have been able to get reimbursed.
Oh, that's awesome. That's good news.
And the more that our users push in, and the more that the providers are saying, look, this is providing real outcomes, the more likely it'll be that we can get comprehensive coverage. And it's still early, right? We only have 6 months worth of patient data. And so it'll take a while to convince, but we kind of need everybody to help us push, because that's the only way that the payers move.
Yeah, I understand. So I heard that Cionic recently won an award. Can you share a bit about that with our viewers?
So we actually won 2 awards, a gold on the digital design side, so the application and how it interacts with the body, and then an award on the industrial design, so the form factor and what it looks like. And so we're super proud of those 2 awards, and really speaks to what I think is a shift in, or at least where I hope we shift in healthcare, where it's like the number one spend in consumer, so it should reflect consumer passions and be reflective of their needs and designs and the whole experience they're going through.
Pass on congratulations to the entire team. That's well deserved, I am sure. So is there anything else that we haven't talked about yet that you would like to share about Cionic or the sleeve or what's happening in the future?
The one thing I'm always excited to share with folks is this commitment towards the innovation, right? And so oftentimes with medical devices, it's such a hurdle to go through and get that first clearance, and then you don't see innovation from that. Some of these products, they haven't changed in like a decade, right? We think that this is a consumer product. While it is medical, it's prescription only, we do have that scientific rigor. We are going to continue to innovate. And one of the things that makes that possible is our platform. And so one of the things that we have done is made it super easy, not just for ourselves, but external researchers to use our sleeve, because it collects this sensor data, because you can configure stimulation parameters and you can do that algorithmically. We've been able to get it into the hands of researchers in different academic centers. We've been able to do clinical research where we're really trying to push for a future where we're able to go across more diagnoses, be able to help with more activities of daily living. And, I think about it this way, right? We were talking about the fact that the average cost to bring a new device to market is 6 years and $30 million. It's no wonder my daughter didn't have more technology, more solution. But if we can bring a very stable, expressive platform for innovation, we can put it into the hands of these wonderful academic and scientific researchers. Can we accelerate it? Can we make innovations come at software speeds and software costs? If we can do that, then we really can propel the world of human augmentation forward, bringing more solutions to more people. And that's a passion that I have. It's something that's been ingrained in me since I started in technology. And I'm really excited to realize that vision.
I'm inspired, really. Thank you, Jeremiah. This has been such a pleasure. I'm so glad that we had some time to talk today. And also, I'd like to thank Cionic because they've provided a coupon code for our viewers. So if you decide that you would like to try it, at checkout, you can enter "even so" and get $50 discount off your first down payment at checkout. And I'll put a link in the description below, and also a link to Cionic so you can check it out. Thank you so much for joining me today, everybody. If you like content like this, please make sure you give it a like, the thumbs up under the video. Don't forget to subscribe to my newsletter. Until next time, be well.